and welcome to my channel. It's me, Mish, the dorky reader, and today's video is my June reading wrap-up where I kind of go over all the books I read or didn't read in the month of June. So for this month, I had a huge stack of, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 books. So, I mean, I can barely even pick it up. But here's my stack of books. Dun, 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 dun. And in this stack of books, there were some good ones, but there's also just some kind of duds, really, honestly. So we'll see how my wrap-up goes. So for the very first top of the stack, I have John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, and I did not read this tiny little book. I've read it before in the past, and it is really definitely worth a read if you've never read this classic. It's very short. It's you can get into it pretty easily. However, it is really sad. So if you want a book that'll make you cry a little bit, this is probably it. But I didn't read it this month, so it doesn't count towards my June goal. I wanted to mention real quick, in the last reading wrap-up in the month of May, I read The Strength of the Few. That did bleed over into the month of June. It took me the first 4 or 5 days of June from my last thing to complete it. So it did kind of shorten some of my reading time. However, that said, I still did really good. Okay, next on the stack is The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. This is by Beth Brower. I gave this a 5-star. I really, really love this, and I'm currently reading volume 2. I absolutely love the character of Emma M. Lyon. She is really well written, and if you like Jane Austen kind of movies or film adaptations, but you don't really like the language of Jane Austen's actual books, this book fits that bill. Like, it really, I don't know, it's very accessible. However, it also does take place in the 1880s versus the 1780s and 90s, like Jane Austen's world, but there's still very similar, like, social graces, balls, teas, things that she has to go to. She's just this really wonderful, modern-minded, free-thinking woman who's very unique and clever. And there's all these different handsome gentlemen that just keep popping into her life here and there, and you keep wondering in the back of your mind, who is going to be the love interest in the end of this book series? You never know, and it's really fun. So if you enjoy that kind of sound, I highly recommend this. Okay, so that was the first book I read, and then I have Aurora Rising. I did not read, and I have The Shadow Throne by Jennifer A. Nielsen. This is the 3rd book in the Ascendance trilogy, and I did read this. Actually, this book turns out to have 4 or 5, I think, volumes. However, originally it was planned to just be a trilogy, so this kind of ended that first trilogy. I do plan on continuing the series and reading books 4 and 5 to find out what happens with our characters. I will say the first 2 books I really loved. This one, it was kind of a letdown. It felt much more predictable, and I think what I really liked about books 1 and 2 is that there were some surprise elements involved, and it was a little like, oh, like it kind of felt like that. So I enjoyed those twists in the first 2 books, and since this one felt like, okay, I kind of see what's happening, or I can kind of predict what's going to happen, it didn't have that same feeling. But it wasn't bad, and especially for a middle grade, I definitely highly recommend this to anyone who has a middle grade aged kid who wants a story at their reading level, but is still maybe a little bit more mature in its themes. It definitely covers a little bit of warfare and some other stuff, and I don't know, it's good. So I liked it, just a little bit of a disappointment compared to the first 2. Next, I have The Isle of the Bedlam Bride. I did not read this tome, so I'm still behind. My mother has now surpassed me in the Dungeon Crawler Carl universe because she's been reading back to back to back each book, and she's probably going to finish this series before I ever even open this, knowing my mom. Okay, next I have Canon by Paige Lewis. This was perfectly read during Pride Month, as it is a queer fiction. It is kind of fantasy because it's very surreal and weird, and it kind of gave kind of weird, almost trippy storytelling vibes. But I will say, even though it was fast and easy to consume, and there were some interesting techniques used in the writing itself to make it more accessible, I thought the story was kind of flat. Like, it wasn't that great of a story. And I didn't feel myself attached to many of the characters in this book. There was a couple characters, in fact, I didn't like at all. Like, Adrena, I thought was kind of selfish, and I don't know, I didn't really like her character. There was another character, a they, them, named Yara. Their story was a little more compelling, and I did enjoy their story overall a little bit more. But it was still not that great. And so when I think about reading this book, I'm like, it was okay. It wasn't that special. Also, I feel like a lot of political, kind of socio-environmental things were brought up in the story to make a point, but they weren't like subtle. It was very in your face. And when I'm reading, I'm trying to escape reality, not be like confronted with it, even if I agree with everything. It still doesn't feel fun to read when someone just spells out, and then everyone trashed the ocean and made it, full of garbage, and you're like, I know, everything's horrible. I don't know, I'm not in the mood for that right now. I am very sick of all the negative things out there, and I want to forget them for a moment, because otherwise my heart just crushes. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, overall, I didn't really enjoy my time reading this book, so I'm probably going to unhaul it. But maybe someone else will like it. I also really do love the cover. I think it's really beautiful and styled really pretty. So maybe someone else will find more entertainment in this than I did. The next book on my stack is This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Alana Andrews. And I had a really good time reading this. I'm not going to say this is like mind-blowing, the best book I ever read, but it was a lot of fun. There was a character, basically, a woman who wakes up one day and she's basically in the gutters, naked, just kind of like lost in her favorite book story of all time. This book is a series she's been reading since childhood, and she knows characters front and back. Like, she's read this like so many times throughout her life, and she just knows this world. But she's just kind of like woke up stranded in it, and it's a dangerous world, and she's trying to survive first and foremost. But then as she gets to know people and comes in contact with some of her favorite characters, she finds she doesn't really want them to die the way they do in the book, and so she takes it upon herself to try and maybe change a few things to maybe prevent their death. She's also, as this series is called, what is her name? It's something, Maggie the Undying is the name of the series. And as the name of the series implies, she's unable to die. But she does feel pain when she dies, so it's not pleasant. So she comes to find out that she can't die, and so she takes risks that others might not appreciate. There are lots of eligible, handsome male characters for her to choose from. There's one in particular she ends up having a relationship with, and there are some surprise elements in this book which are really fun to read. So I don't know, overall it was really great. I will say that at times, because she goes over all these characters' backstories in great detail when she kind of thinks about them or whatever, it can get a little like info dumpy, and that can be kind of tedious, and there was like maybe a little bit of a lull. I'll say the first fifth of the book I was really invested. It was really exciting right off the bat, and then it kind of sunk a little bit into like the second and third fifths of the book, where I was kind of like, okay, and then the fourth and fifth took off again, and it was really exciting. So I don't know, take what you will from that, and maybe you'll find a different experience than I had, but I really liked it. I still gave it, I'd say a 4 or 4.5. I really enjoyed myself. So good romantasy. Okay, next I have Flame in the Mist by Renee Adia, or I cannot pronounce this last name to save my life. But anyway, I did not read Flame in the Mist. It was almost chosen, but I think in the last moment I ended up picking a different book, and I'll get to that. I also didn't read Rain and Ruin or the Scorpion Queen, but I did end up reading Stolen Midnights by Catherine Quinn. I went on a Book of the Month kind of kick. I took all 3 of my Book of the Month choices this month, and I read through them. I will say this one was my least favorite of all the books. It was cheesy. It was okay. I had fun. It was fast, whatever. But the dialogue was really cringy, and it felt very like, I don't know. There was even like a romantic scene at one point. It just felt kind of, not because the scene was icky, what they doing wasn't icky. It wasn't like that. It just felt icky because of the way they were talking. It was very like, I'll die for you. You know, like it felt really cheesy. They didn't say I'll die for you. But it just had that kind of vibe of really cringy talk. And people don't talk to each other that way. And so when people have bad dialogue in a book, I can't get over it. So for me, the issue was the writing. The plot was interesting enough, and the world building was kind of cool. Like, it was an interesting world setup, and I liked the idea of it. But I think the delivery kind of landed flat for me. So here is another unhaul for the month of June. So that is it, basically. Let me pull up the ones that I did read, because then I can kind of show you my little stack. I like to do that. It makes me feel accomplished, because who doesn't want to feel accomplished? So, no, Emma. Okay, here, hold on. Dun, da, da, da. These are the books I did read, plus, of course, the 4 or 5 days I spent working on The Strength of the Few, which is a tome of a book. Oh, Emma keeps flying. Anyway, those are my books for June. I hope you had a wonderful month of reading, and I'll see you in the next one. If I can find the little button to turn it off, that'd be great. Okay, here we go. Bye!